beautiful snowy day, snowy morning. And I threw out some sunflower seeds for the turkeys. Haven't seen a deer show up yet. I've got the local tribe of thorn swift deer. Started out knowing the deer from grandmother deer a long time ago. I actually hit grandmother deer with a car. Luckily, I just pulled out of the driveway. I was going all of 5 miles an hour. I don't know what it was, but I was just creeping up the road at about 5 for no apparent reason, taking my kids to school, Max and Molly. And grandmother deer popped up from the gully. There's no chance to see her. Bumped into her and knocked her down, and she kind of slid a little bit and then got back up and ran into the woods. And her daughter was Sasha, who was a wonderful deer. I knew her for years. When there was too many people walking the trails, this is just one example, Sasha would come and sit with me underneath the oak tree, and she always knew where everyone was, and when she heard visitors coming back up, she would like prance around the pavilion behind the visitors and then go down the trail and then look at me as she's prancing down. I swear I heard her laughing at the people. They didn't even know she was there. There's such an unknown world out there that we're normally not aware of. People are walking down the trails, yapping on their cell phones, passing by who knows what, not looking up, not looking down, just intent on their whole lives. They come here and they bring their lives with them, and they're not even experiencing what they're passing through because they don't notice. I would hazard to say that you, my viewers, my loyal viewers, I put up videos and then I take them down when I get a certain number of views. I'm not out for, 500,000 views, not that I'd ever get it. Count it down, maybe 60 to 100 views. Time for the video to go, unless it's a bow making video. Those can stay forever. But the other ones that are more personal, they just come and go. Not interested in collecting numbers. I appreciate my regular viewers. Thank you for tuning in. Sasha and deer, they know individual people. They're not just bags of meat on hooves running around. They have their own society. They have their own family units. They take turns watching each other's kids. It's a lot of work. It's just like us. You get a sister and her sister, aunts, taking turns watching the young ones. I like that. Teepee's warming up and snow's sloughing off. And one time, Sasha was up here hanging out with me with Sam and then her niece. She was relieving her sister, giving her a chance just to hang out and not have to watch the kids. And the two kids, Sam, who is still here, I know Sam, she'll pop out and say hi to me with her kid. Probably as soon as I get out of the teepee, say hi, follow me around, nod. That's how they say hi. I'll see her. But anyway, Sam, and I'll save how I was introduced to Sam on another video. It was quite spectacular. She was watching Sam and then her niece. And she's up there eating out of her bowl of goat chow, sitting with me. The kids are romping around. Pretty soon, it's like one kid gets an idea, they run off. She told them to stay put. It's a very low guttural sound, almost imperceptible to people. They've got better ears than us, so when they're talking amongst themselves, unless you're paying attention, if you're not on your cell phone, you can hear it. You can hear them talking, calling each other. But anyway, the kids ran off, and Sasha looks up. It's like, shoot, they were gone. She parked them in the meadow over here, and the kids, just being kids, ran off. And I remember there was a lot of tourists in here. They came up because everyone was on the trails. They weren't up in the yard. But poor Sasha, she was calling them. Maybe you can hear that, maybe you can't. Did 3 circles on the outer loop, passing by people, kicking people out of the way, looking for those kids, and finally she found them. Kids are kids, whether or not they're deer or whether or not they're humans or what have you. Kids are kids. But I could sit here and tell you a lot of Sasha stories. I could tell them all day long, along with Sam stories and Sess and all the other deers. Stanley the deer, he'll come up here too. But anyway, the oral tradition, telling stories, and take what I told you, and put it in terms of this story, where the natives, the First Nations people, they thought of animal life in a whole different way than normal modern people. I'm not going to editorialize in what I think about modern people. But they had this understanding, just like I do, just like maybe you do, hopefully. The animals have their own societies. They have their family units. They have thought. In many native stories, animals will cease being in their animalia form, and when they go together, they will take off their cloaks, whether or not they're eagle feathers or duck feathers or deer hides, and they will sit in their lodges just like people. And then they pass out of their lodges, their places, which is metaphorical, and then they will become again what we see of them. Now, whether or not we choose to see them as they are or go beyond that first layer, totally up to you. We have freedom of thought in this teepee. We have freedom of thought. This is because it's a wintry day, there's snow on the ground. I'm going to deviate from my normal scheduled broadcasting. I was going to tell you one story, but that doesn't seem appropriate that there's snow on the ground. And snowy winter days, those are the days of storytelling around the fire. Usually it would be in the evening or at night because there's stuff to do during the day. I will editorialize a little bit. Unlike this world that we find ourselves in, the old world, the old people, the old timers, the ancestors, the people that came before us, they valued knowledge, they valued skill. There were no participation medals. People weren't graded on just showing up. You had to know things, whether or not it's making snowshoes or procuring tobacco, making pipes, making bows, gathering food, hunting. You had to do something to be a part of society. You had to be useful. Or else they wouldn't have succeeded. They would have died out a long time ago. It's enough editorializing. But this is a Cree story, Métis/Cree. And Métis means mix, First Nations, and typically French. Because the French approached things different than the English when they came over here. The French adapted and became like the natives. The English are English. Nothing against them, they just have a different way of doing things. The French, the little hairy men. Cree Métis story. And in the evenings, the people would sit in their lodge. They would discuss things. They were quite organized. They would smoke their pipe and discuss the previous day and the coming day. They would talk about hunting. They would talk about life in general. They would tell stories. They would pass the pipe around the circle. Each person would take a puff, sending their thoughts up above. It would transfer around. I just heard turkeys, they're out there. And that's the way it was. Well, the pipe, you have to think about these things in deep, deep terms behind the veil. The pipe would go around the circle of people, and then it would float out the door. And it would pass from animal lodge to animal lodge. Well, it passed around the circle of the Moose people. The Moose people were sitting around their lodge discussing the coming days and what happened that previous day and telling stories, Moose people stories. And as the pipe went around the circle of Moose people, the moose would turn and look the other way and not touch it. Because once you smoke the pipe of the people, or if the people smoked the pipe of the Moose people, they had a connection. The people would know what the moose were thinking. They would see through the eyes of the moose. Well, that pipe went around the circle, and the older the moose and Most of the younger moose just turned around. They did what they were supposed to do. But this brash young moose snatched the pipe and took a puff, 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 took a puff off the pipe of the people. Peter Piper pickled peppers. The moose were incensed. They looked at that brash young moose and said, "What are you doing? What were you thinking? Why did you take the pipe of the people? Now they'll know where to find us tomorrow." The moose was like, "So? We can outrun the moose, or the people. We are stronger than the people. We can run faster, farther, higher, jump higher. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not a fear to the people. I am a strong young moose." One of the older, wiser moose just looked at him, shook his head, and it's, "You don't know what tomorrow brings. You don't know what conditions brings. The people are smart. They have ways. They'll find us." Well, that night, heavy snow fell. A very heavy snow fell. A snow that was deep enough to cause the steps of the moose to be thrown off a little bit. They had to make their way through the deep snow before the trails were formed. They formed trails. Allows them to go through the deep snow. The people, on the other hand, they were able to skitter across the top of the snow like the grouse does with its big feathery feet. It doesn't sink down, it runs along the top because the people have what's known as snowshoes. Well, that day, following that night of heavy snow, was hunting day. The people were going out and hunting. And lucky for them, that young moose smoked the pipe of the people. They had their eyes on them. Well, the people went out hunting, and they were able to skitter along the top of the snow. And they zeroed right into where the moose were. The bigger, stronger moose were able to make it through the snow. But that unwise moose, that young brash moose, that didn't really know the surroundings enough, as well as the older moose, came trapped in the snow, and the people were able to catch up to him easily on the snowshoes. And that young moose fell prey to a hunter's arrow. The young moose was dead. The young moose was taken by the people. Well, the people, they weren't trophy hunters. They were in tune with the world as a whole. They understood the moose. They respected the moose. You hunt not because you hate. You hunt because you need. You hunt because it keeps you alive. And it doesn't mean that you don't respect the animal. And that night, after that young moose was killed, people went to work preparing the hides, making use of every part of that moose, tools out of the bone, giving homage to a young moose, tobacco offerings, praying for his soul, praying for the moose's soul, using every part of that moose, showing that moose respect. Well, how it works is that night in the moose lodge, the young moose came through the door, and everyone was confused. You were shot, you were killed, you were used by the people. The young moose sat down, gained a little wisdom at that point, and shared something with the moose people. He said, "You know what? I didn't do what you said. I smoked the pipe of the people. They knew where we were, and I was struck down. But the people allowed me to live again." Deep thought. Because they didn't kill me for sport. They killed me because of need. We're all part of this big circle. They're going to use my skin. They're going to use my bones. They're going to use my tendons. They're going to use my meat. They're going to use everything. They're going to even use my intestines. The whole thing. They prayed for me. They gave tobacco presentations. Running out of words here. And they love us. And because they treated me in this way of great respect, I was able to come back again. And that's the connection between humans and the animal people. I appreciate that, and so should you. it would be easy for me seeing December, whatever the date today is, 2020, I don't know what the date is. Thinking back an entire year, 365 days, and seeing the difference that has come about in 1 year. It would be easy to say, gosh darn it, apologize for being so rough on you with my language. Gosh darn it, rats, holy cow. You know, things have kind of gone sideways. But in this moment, you're sitting hopefully in a nice place in front of your cellular device or your TV or your whatever, your computer. You know, hopefully you're in a decent, reasonable space. And although you do need to think forward, I don't even want to think what December, whatever this date is, 2021 is going to be like. I'm afraid, my friends, I'm not that optimistic. But I don't want to take this day away from you. I want you to think about the story. I want you to think about your life experience. I want you to think about gaining skills that are useful. Perhaps squirreling away your acorns. Metaphorically speaking again, we don't eat acorns like the people back then did. White oak acorns aren't as bitter as black oak, just saying. Appreciate what you have right now, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe those people that pass their pipe into your lodge that you take aren't going to be as respectful as you are. Have a good one. Thank you for watching. Appreciate your viewership. And yes, I do have a bow that is in the mummified state. It's been drying. The rawhide has been drying for a day or two. I'm going to, because it's a thicker deer rawhide, which I should probably say thank you, and so should you if you receive this bow, for the gift that deer has given us for that rawhide, and that tree for the wood. I think we lose something if we just think of the trees and the deer and the moose, you know, as just things. That's not on them, that's on you. That's your loss. That is your loss. I'm going to take that gauze wrap off today and then mummy wrap another bow. I could have done them both at one time. I could have just run through production line style and backed both bows, mummy wrapped both bows, let them dry at one time. But I want to take these two, currently making 2 paddle bows. I want to take both of those bows one at a time. I want to experience each one of those bows fully. I'm going to paint each one of those bows, not production line, one at a time, putting my energy into it. I need to do that.